The alien queen was facing death when a human fighter gave everything in the cold dark between stars. Queen Lyra of the Zenthari lay broken on the floor of her dying warship. Her silver skin, once bright with glowing patterns that told the history of her people, now looked dull and cracked. Deep wounds covered her body, leaking amethyst-colored blood that pooled beneath her. The ship groaned around her, metal twisting as if in pain. Outside the shattered viewport, the remains of her fleet floated like bones in space. Twisted hulls, frozen bodies, and silence. Lyra had fought the Krell for 3 long cycles. They were a swarm of insect-like conquerors who ate worlds and left nothing but dust. She had led her people with honor. But today, in the nebula known as the Graveyard of Empires, her last ship had been torn apart. The Krell were coming. She could hear their claws scraping on the metal walls, their hissing voices promising slow death. She closed her eyes not from fear, but from grief. Her people were gone. Her legacy would vanish with her. Then a new sound broke through the noise. A sharp thud, followed by the hiss of a cutting torch. A figure dropped from a hole in the ceiling, landing lightly on bent knees. She wore a scorched flight suit with faded Earth defense markings. Her dark hair was tied back, sweat on her brow, eyes sharp and calm. This was Lisa Morgan, pilot of the Stardust Runner, the only human ship that had answered the Zenthari's final distress call. "You're still breathing," Lisa said, voice rough but steady. She moved fast, pulling a med kit from her belt and pressing a sealant patch over Lyra's chest wound. The alien queen flinched but didn't pull away. "Why help me?" Lyra whispered, her voice like wind through glass. "Humans do not know us. We are strangers." "Doesn't matter," Lisa replied, wrapping a pressure bandage around Lyra's leg. "You're alive. That's enough." Before Lyra could respond, the wall exploded inward. 3 Krell warriors burst through, tall, armored in black chitin, red eyes burning, claws clicking with hunger. They charged without hesitation. Lisa shoved Lyra behind a console and raised her pulse pistol. 2 quick shots. 2 Krell fell twitching. The third lunged. She dodged, but its claw raked her side, tearing through fabric and skin. She grunted, staggered, but kept firing until the creature collapsed in a heap. Blood soaked Lisa's suit. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "We need to move. Their mothership's still out there. It'll turn this wreck into plasma soon." Lyra tried to stand, but her legs gave out. "Leave me. Take my data core. It holds every memory of my people. Their songs, their wars, their children's names. Give it to your archives. Let someone remember us." Lisa shook her head. "Not happening." She knelt, pulled Lyra onto her back, and stood despite the pain in her own side. "I didn't fly through a war zone to watch you die alone." They moved through the collapsing ship. Smoke filled the halls. Sparks rained from broken wires. Every step felt like walking through a tomb. Lyra, weak but alert, whispered directions to a hidden escape pod bay deep in the ship's core. A last resort she'd never thought she'd use. When they reached it, the pod was there, but damaged. 1 thruster was missing. The life support flickered. Lisa didn't hesitate. She dropped to her knees, opened the access panel, and began rewiring circuits with bare hands. Her fingers bled, but she worked fast, using scraps from her own gear to patch the system. "This'll get you to Orion's Rest," she said, wiping sweat from her eyes. "Neutral station safe. From there you can start over." "What about you?" Lyra asked, voice trembling. Lisa gave a small smile. "I've got a trick or 2 left." Outside, the Krell mothership loomed like a mountain of teeth and steel. It had begun its final bombardment, energy beams slicing through the Zenthari wreck, turning decks into molten slag. Lisa knew the pod wouldn't survive launch under fire. Someone had to draw the mothership's eyes away. She helped Lyra into the pod, strapped her in, and placed the data core in her hands. "Fly straight. Don't look back." "You're staying," Lyra realized, heart pounding. "Someone's got to give you a clean shot out of here," Lisa said. She tapped the pod's control panel. "Go." "Why?" Lyra's voice broke. "You owe me nothing. We never met." "You could have left." Lisa met her gaze. Her eyes were tired but kind. "Because if I don't, who will remember that someone tried to help a stranger?" Before Lyra could argue, Lisa slammed the hatch shut and ran back toward the bridge. She climbed into the wreckage of her fighter, the Stardust Runner still tethered to the Zenthari ship. Half the cockpit was crushed, but the engine sparked when she hit the ignition. On the comms, she opened a wideband channel. "Hey, Ugly," she called, voice steady. "Over here." The Krell mothership turned. Its massive weapons swiveled toward the tiny human craft. Lisa grinned through the pain. That's right. Come get me. She fired the thrusters and shot out of the hangar, weaving through debris like a ghost. The Krell fired. Plasma beams lit the void, but she rolled, banked, used every trick she'd learned in 100 dogfights. She led them away from the pod's path, deeper into the ion storms of the nebula. Inside the pod, Lyra watched on the rear screen. Tears, clear and faintly glowing, slid down her cheeks. She saw Lisa's ship take a direct hit, saw it spin, trailing fire but still flying, still drawing fire, saw it vanish into a storm of charged particles, the Krell chasing it like predators after wounded prey. The pod cleared the danger zone, autopilot engaged. Destination, safety. Back in the nebula, the Stardust runner was falling apart. Lisa's vision blurred. Blood loss. Oxygen thin. She knew she wouldn't make it. But she also knew Lyra would. That was enough. With her last strength, she aimed the dying ship straight at the Krell mothership's command spire. She armed the reactor overload. For Earth, she whispered. For Xanthera. For everyone they tried to erase. The explosion lit up the nebula like a newborn star. Weeks later, on the neutral station Orion's Rest, Queen Lyra stood before a crowd of many species. Humans, Vree, Kaltari, even former enemies. She wore a simple robe, her wounds healing, her eyes clear. In her hands she held two things, the Xanthari data core and a small scorched dog tag recovered from the edge of the nebula. Her name was Lisa Morgan, Lyra announced, voice strong. She was a pilot, a stranger, and my savior. She placed the dog tag into a newly built memorial wall, a wall that now bore the names of all who fell in the war against the Krell, human and alien alike. She gave everything so that I could live, so that my people's story would not end in silence. From this day forward, the Xanthari will honor Earth not as distant allies, but as kin, because in our darkest hour, a human woman showed us what courage truly means. In the crowd, a young human girl watched with wide eyes. Her name was Mia. She had just signed up for the Defense Corps that morning. She didn't know Lisa, but she knew her story now, and she would carry it forward. Far away in the silent graveyard of ships, a single piece of the Stardust runner drifted, untouched by scavengers. Etched into its hull, nearly invisible, were two words, scratched by a dying hand. Fly free. And somewhere in the endless dark, it seemed the stars themselves burned a little brighter in tribute. Months had passed since the strike on Xylos Prime, and the fragile alliance between Earth and the Xanthari had grown stronger with every sunrise on Orion's Rest. Queen Lyra no longer walked alone through the station's corridors. Now humans and Xanthari moved together, repair crews sharing tools, children from both species playing in the hydro gardens, even shared meals in the mess hall where spicy earth stews met Xanthari light broths that shimmered like liquid stars. Trust was no longer a hope. It was a habit, but peace was thin. The Krell had not returned in force, yet whispers came from the outer colonies. Missing freighters, silent outposts, strange energy echoes in dead zones. The war was not over. It was only waiting. Lyra spent her days in the forge chamber, now fully awake and humming with life. New warforms grew daily, their sleek hulls unfolding like flowers in zero gravity. Human engineers worked side by side with Xanthari biosmiths, learning to shape metal and memory into one. Among them was Claire, who had become something of a bridge between the two peoples. She wore a Xanthari armband now, woven by Kale himself, and spoke their language with careful respect. One evening, as Lyra reviewed star charts with Diane Ross, a priority alert flashed across the main screen. It came from the far edge of known space, a signal unlike any before. Not Krell, not human, not Xanthari. It pulsed in a rhythm that felt alive. It's repeating a pattern, Diane said, zooming in. 3 long bursts, 2 short, like a heartbeat. Lyra's eyes widened. That's the call of the Elder Watch. She turned to Diane, voice low. Before the Xanthari scattered across the stars, we were not alone. There were others, older, wiser. They left when the galaxy grew violent. We called them the Veiled Ones. They vanished beyond the rim, promising to return only if all hope was lost. You think they're coming back? Diane asked. Or they're warning us, Lyra said. That signal? It's coming from the Silence Belt, a region where no ship returns. Diane rubbed her temple. That's a death zone. Radiation, gravity wells, phantom signals. Even our best scouts avoid it. Then we go anyway, Lyra said. If the Veiled Ones speak, we must listen. Preparations began at once. They would take one ship, the newest war form named Echo of Lisa in honor of the pilot who started it all. Diane would command. Claire would handle systems. Lyra would navigate. And with them, a young human cadet named Mia, now promoted after proving herself in simulator drills and emergency drills alike. She was quiet, observant, and carried Lisa's old flight manual like a sacred text. The journey into the Silence Belt took 10 days. Space grew strange. Stars dimmed. Comms crackled with voices that weren't there. Instruments gave conflicting readings. Even the warform's biocore grew uneasy, its glow flickering like a nervous pulse. On the 11th day, they found it. A structure, not a ship, not a station. A ring of black stone floating in perfect stillness covered in symbols that shifted when stared at too long. At its center, a void darker than space itself. "That's not natural," Claire whispered. "Nothing here is," Diane replied, hands steady on the controls. As they approached, the ring activated. Light poured from its surface, forming a bridge of energy straight to their hull. A voice echoed in their minds, not through speakers but inside their thoughts. "You have come with open hearts. That is rare." Lyra stepped forward. "We are Lyra of Zenthera and Diane of Earth. We seek the Veiled Ones," the voice softened. "We have watched. We saw the human give her life for a stranger. We saw the Queen rise not for vengeance but for unity. You have passed the first test." A portal opened in the ring's center. Beyond it, a world of soft light and floating islands drifted in a sky of silver mist. They landed on one such island, greeted not by weapons, but by beings of gentle light. Tall, faceless figures wrapped in flowing robes that shimmered with galaxies. Their leader, who called itself Alara, spoke through thought. "We left because the galaxy forgot kindness, chose power over peace, but you remembered. The Krell are still out there," Lyra said. "They grow stronger. We cannot stop them alone," Alara nodded. "The Krell are not just invaders. They are a symptom, born from a broken world that sought to consume others to fill its own emptiness. To defeat them, you must heal the wound, not just burn the infection." "How?" Diane asked. "There is a seed," Alara said, "deep in the heart of the Krell hive mind. A remnant of their original world, buried under layers of rage and hunger. If that seed is awakened, the Krell may remember what they once were. And choose peace." "That sounds impossible," Claire said. "So did a human saving a Zenthari queen," Ilara replied gently. "Yet it happened. They were given a gift, a small crystal warm to the touch, humming with quiet energy. This is a memory seed. It holds the truth of the Krell's origin. Carry it to their central hive. Place it in the core. If even one Krell feels its call, the change will spread." The return journey was silent. Each of them carried the weight of what they had learned. Hope was not just about fighting. It was about understanding. Back on Orion's Rest, they shared the news with the Council. Some doubted. Others feared it was a trap. But Lyra stood firm. "We tried fire. Now we try light." Plans formed for a final mission. Not an attack, an offering. They would return to Xylos Prime, now quiet but still holding the Krell's central hive core. Diane would fly. Lyra would carry the seed. Mia would stay behind, ready to lead if they did not return. The launch was quiet. No fanfare. Just 3 souls in a ship named for courage, heading toward the heart of darkness. Xylos Prime looked dead. The hive was silent, its towers cracked, its skies still red. But as they descended, movement stirred below. Not swarms. Individuals. Krell, standing alone, looking up. "They're waiting," Claire said, voice tight. Lyra stepped onto the surface, the memory seed glowing in her hands. Diane stood beside her, weapon holstered. They walked toward the hive's core chamber, once a place of nightmares, now eerily still. At the center, a pulsing orb of black energy hovered, the hive mind's anchor. Lyra placed the seed upon it. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the orb flickered. Colors bloomed within it, green, blue, gold. Images flashed. A green world, oceans, trees. Krell not as monsters, but as gentle beings tending gardens under twin suns. Their world had died, poisoned. They had turned to war to survive, to forget the pain. A single Krell emerged from the shadows, taller than the rest, its armor scarred but clean. It knelt before Lyra. "We remember," it said, voice rough but clear. "We had forgotten. Ourselves." Tears fell from Lyra's eyes, not of sorrow but release. The change spread. Across the planet, Krell dropped their weapons. Some wept. Others simply sat, staring at the sky as if seeing it for the first time. News traveled fast. Within weeks, Krell envoys arrived at Orion's Rest, not to fight but to speak. They asked for help rebuilding. For teachers. For seeds. Earth and Xanthera agreed. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to heal. Krell helped clear debris from battle zones. Xanthari taught them songs of peace. Humans shared farming techniques. Mia, now a full pilot, flew supply runs to former war zones, delivering not weapons but books, tools, and saplings. One evening, Lyra stood on the station's observation deck with Diane and Claire. Below, a Krell child played with a human boy, building something from blocks, part ship, part tree. Lisa would be proud, Diane said. She started this, Lyra replied, not with a weapon, but with a choice. Far away in the silence belt, the ring of stone glowed softly, as if smiling, and in the heart of every being who had chosen kindness over fear, a quiet light burned, proof that even in the darkest times, one act of courage could change everything. Peace had settled over the galaxy like morning mist, soft and fragile but real. On Orion's Rest Station, children of 3 species, human, Xanthari, and Krell, played together in the central plaza, their laughter echoing off walls once scarred by war. The Krell no longer wore armor. Instead, they wore simple robes dyed in earth tones. Their claws carefully capped to avoid accidents. They helped rebuild what they had broken, not out of shame but out of a quiet need to belong again. Queen Lyra watched from a quiet balcony, her silver skin catching the station's artificial sunlight. She wore no crown, only the same sash from her people's last banner and Lisa Morgan's dog tag, now polished smooth from years of touch. Beside her stood Diane Ross, retired from active flight duty but still sharp-eyed, and Claire, now head of the Joint Engineering Division. They rarely spoke of battles anymore. They spoke of gardens, of schools, of the first Krell-Human Xanthari festival planned for next cycle. But peace, like all living things, needed tending. Rumors had begun to stir from the far rim. Strange signals. Ships vanishing without trace, and worst of all, a silence where there should be voices. The veiled ones who had guided them to the memory seed had gone quiet. Their ring in the silence belt no longer responded to hails. Maybe they're just resting, Claire offered one evening as they reviewed sensor logs. Or something silenced them, Diane said, arms crossed. We've seen this before. Calm before the storm. Lyra said nothing. She had felt it too, a coldness in the stars like a breath held too long. That night she dreamed of Lisa. Not as she died, but as she lived, laughing in a training yard, sharing rations, saying, "Someone's got to try." The next morning a distress call broke through the static. It was faint, broken, but unmistakable. It came from Alara, the leader of the Veiled Ones. They are here. Not Krell. Not of this galaxy. They consume light. They erase memory. The signal cut off. Lyra called an emergency council. Humans, Xanthari, and Krell leaders gathered in the main chamber. Among them was the former Krell warlord, now known as Toran, who had knelt before the memory seed. His voice was calm but grave. We faced hunger. We faced rage, but this is different. This is emptiness with purpose. We have to go, Lyra said. The Veiled Ones saved us. Now they need us. Diane nodded. But we don't go blind. We take the strongest ship, the best crew, and we prepare for the unknown. They chose the Echo of Lisa, now upgraded with Xanthari bioshields, human stealth tech, and Krell resonance dampeners, a true child of unity. Mia, now a seasoned pilot, would fly. Torin would come as envoy and protector. Claire would manage systems. And Lyra would lead. They launched at dawn cycle, the station's lights dimming in silent farewell. The journey to the silence belt took longer this time. Space felt wrong. Stars flickered like dying candles. Comms filled with whispers that made no sense. Fragments of old songs, half-remembered names, Lisa's voice saying "Fly free" over and over. When they reached the ring, it was dark. No light, no bridge. The stone was cracked, covered in black veins that pulsed slowly like a dying heart. Something's inside it, Torin said, his senses sharper than most. Not alive, not dead. Waiting. Mia guided the ship through the ring's center. Instead of the silver world of the Veiled Ones, they emerged into a void. No stars, no light. Only a single structure floating in the nothing. A tower of obsidian glass reflecting not their ship, but memories. Lyra saw herself as a child, learning the old songs. Diane saw Lisa's last flight. Claire saw her first successful engine test. Mia saw the day she signed up holding Lisa's manual. It feeds on memory, Torin realized. It shows us what we love. To take it. A voice echoed. Not in their minds, but in the ship itself, vibrating through the hull. You are made of stories. We are made of silence. Give us your past and we will spare your future. And who are you? Lyra demanded. We are the Hollow. We were born when the first star forgot its name. We drift, we consume, we erase. You cannot fight us. You can only feed us or fade. The tower began to pull at the ship, not with gravity but with longing, a hunger for identity. Alarms blared. Systems flickered. Claire fought to keep power stable. It's draining our core. Not energy, memory. Our logs, our personal files, even our neural backups. Mia gripped the controls. If we lose our memories, we lose ourselves. Lyra closed her eyes. She remembered Lisa's choice. Not to destroy, but to give. Not to take, but to trust. What if we don't fight it? She said suddenly. What? Diane turned. You want to let it eat us? No, Lyra said. What if we give it something it can't consume? She opened a channel, not to the tower, but to every ship in their alliance. She broadcast a single command. Share your stories. Across the galaxy, humans, Zenthari, and Krell responded. They sent songs, poems, children's drawings, recipes, flight logs, wedding vows, lullabies, war diaries, jokes, confessions, dreams. Millions of voices, millions of memories streamed into the echo of Lisa's core. Claire understood. We're not hiding our memories. We're flooding it with them. Lyra nodded. Silence can't exist in a storm of voices. She opened the ship's core to the tower. Light erupted, not from weapons, but from memory. The tower shuddered as billions of stories poured into it. Joy, grief, love, fear, hope. It had expected hunger. It found community. The black veins cracked. The obsidian surface softened, then bloomed with color. First blue, then gold, then green. The tower was changing. From its peak, a new voice spoke, gentle, confused. We remember being alone, but now we are not. The void around them filled with stars. Not the old ones, but new, born from the overflow of shared memory. Alara appeared, not as a being of light, but as a woman-shaped figure made of stardust. You did not destroy the Hollow. You gave it a home. What is it? Mia asked. A lost child of the early universe, Alara said. It never knew connection, only absence. Now it knows both. The Hollow, now calling itself Nara, chose to stay in the Silence Belt, not as a threat, but as a guardian. It would watch over lost ships, guide wanderers, and keep the stories safe. On the return journey, no one spoke much. They were tired but full. They had not fired a single shot. They had won with generosity. Back on Orion's rest, they were greeted not with cheers but with quiet respect. The children ran to them, not asking about battles, but about the stars they had seen. That night, Lyra stood again on the balcony. Diane joined her. Do you think it's over? Diane asked. No, Lyra said. But maybe it doesn't have to be a war. Maybe it can just be life. Messy, strange, beautiful life. Below, Torin taught Krell children how to plant seeds in human soil. Claire showed Zenthari engineers how to weave light into fabric. Mia sat with a group of young pilots reading from Lisa's manual, her voice steady and kind. Far away in the Silence Belt, Nara hummed a lullaby made from 1,000 voices. And in every heart that had chosen to share instead of hide, to give instead of take, the light of Lisa Morgan still burned, not as a memory of death, but as a promise of tomorrow, for in the end, the greatest weapon was never a ship or a seed or a song. It was the simple, stubborn act of caring for someone you did not have to save, and that more than anything was human. Years had passed since the day the Hollow became Nara, and the galaxy had grown quieter, not from fear but from peace. Orion's Rest was no longer just a station. It was a city of stars, home to humans, Zenthari, Krell, and even a few veiled ones who had chosen to walk among the young species. Gardens bloomed in zero gravity, schools taught in 3 languages, and every cycle ended with a shared meal under the soft glow of artificial constellations. Queen Lyra still lived there, though she no longer called herself queen. She preferred Keeper of Stories, a title she earned not by birth but by choice. She spent her days in the Great Archive, a living library grown from Zenthari crystal and human steel. where memories were stored not in data banks, but in light-woven threads that hummed when touched. Children came to listen as she told of Lisa Morgan, not as a hero of war, but as a woman who saw a stranger and chose to help. Diane Ross had opened a flight school on the station's lower ring, training pilots not just to fly, but to think, to feel, to understand that the sky was not a battlefield but a bridge. Her best student was Maya, now a full instructor, who taught cadets using Lisa's old manual, its pages worn thin, its margins filled with notes from generations of pilots. But even in peace, change comes one morning. A signal arrived from deep space, not a distress call, not a warning, but an invitation. It came from a world beyond the rim, one never charted, never named. The message was simple. We watched. We learned. We are ready. It was signed with a symbol none recognized at first. Then Toran, now elder of the reformed Krell, stepped forward. That is the mark of the Silent Ones, a species older than the Veiled Ones. They never spoke. Never moved. They watched from the edge of time. Why reach out now? Claire asked, arms crossed, her hair now streaked with silver. Because we showed them something new, Lyra said softly. We showed them that enemies can become family. The council agreed to send a delegation. Not soldiers. Not diplomats, teachers, healers, builders. And among them, Lyra insisted, must be someone young, someone who had never known war. Mia volunteered at once. So they prepared the Echo of Lisa, now more legend than ship, its hull etched with names of all who had flown it. This time it carried no weapons, only seeds, books, medical kits, and recordings of children singing in 3 tongues. The journey took 20 cycles. Space felt different now, warmer, as if the stars themselves remembered kindness. When they arrived, the world was unlike any they had seen. No cities, no towers, only vast fields of silver grass that swayed without wind, and beings made of living mist standing in perfect stillness. They did not speak. They did not move toward the ship. They simply waited. Mia stepped out first, alone as Lyra had instructed. She carried no tech, no translator, only a small flute carved from Zenthari wood. She played a lullaby, one Lisa had once hummed during long patrols. The mist beings stirred. One drifted closer, forming a shape like a hand. It touched the flute. Then slowly, it began to echo the tune, not with sound, but with light. Tears filled Mia's eyes. They understand. Over the next days, the exchange began. The Silent Ones showed them how to listen to the planet's heartbeat, how to grow food from starlight, how to heal wounds with song. In return, Maya and the others shared stories, not of battles, but of birthdays, of first flights, of mistakes and forgiveness. Lyra watched from a distance, heart full. This was the future Lisa had made possible, not one of conquest, but of connection. But on the 10th day, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, with ships not Krell, not human, not any known design. They were jagged, black, silent as death. They dropped no bombs. They sent no messages. They simply appeared and began to drain the planet's light. The silver grass turned gray. The mist beings flickered, fading. They're feeding, Torrens said, voice tight. Like the hollow, but cruel. They don't want memory. They want silence. Lyra's blood ran cold. They're erasers, not conquerors, destroyers of meaning. The delegation had no weapons, no army, only what they carried in their hearts. Mia looked at Lyra. What do we do? Lyra remembered Lisa, remembered the memory seed, remembered flooding the hollow with stories. We do what we always do, she said. We share. She ordered the Echo of Lisa to open its core, not to fight but to broadcast. Not just their own memories, but everything in the great archive. Every song, every poem, every child's laugh, every confession of love, every recipe for bread, every pilot's log, every lullaby ever sung. The signal poured into the planet, into the air, into the very soil. The black ships shuddered, their surfaces cracked. From within, voices emerged, not mechanical but broken, lost. Too much. Too bright. We cannot unsee. The erasers had never known beauty, only void, and now they were drowning in light. One by one, the ships powered down, not destroyed, transformed. Their jagged edges softened. Their black hulls bloomed with color. From their cores stepped beings, pale, wide-eyed, trembling. We were born in the end of a dead universe, one whispered. We thought nothing mattered. But this matters. Lyra walked toward them unarmed. You don't have to be empty. You can be full. They wept. Tears of stardust. The silent ones gathered around them, not in fear but in welcome. They placed hands of mist on the newcomers, sharing their calm, their stillness, their deep knowing. Peace returned, deeper than before. On the journey home, no one spoke of victory. They spoke of hope. When they landed on Orion's Rest, the whole station gathered, not to cheer but to listen. Lyra stood before them, not as a leader but as a witness. We thought the galaxy needed saving, she said, but it only needed sharing. Every time we choose to give instead of take, to listen instead of strike, to remember instead of forget, we heal the universe a little more. Mia stood beside her, the flute in her hand. That night she played the lullaby again, and thousands joined in, not with instruments but with voices, with hearts. With memories far away on the new world, the former erasers planted their first garden, using seeds from Earth. They named it Lisa's Field. And in the quiet between stars where once there was only silence, now there was song. For the greatest legacy was not in monuments or ships or wars won, but in the simple truth that one human woman, facing a dying alien queen, chose to care, and in doing so, taught the galaxy how to live, and that light would never fade. Weeks after the battle in the nebula of shattered hopes, Queen Lyra walked the quiet halls of Orion's Rest Station, not as a refugee but as a leader reborn. Her silver skin had healed. Though faint scars traced the paths of her old wounds like maps of survival, she wore no crown, only a simple sash woven from threads of her people's last banner, and around her neck hung Lisa Morgan's dog tag on a thin cord. It was warm to the touch, as if still holding the echo of a human heartbeat. The station buzzed with life. Traders from a dozen worlds, diplomats in polished armor, repair drones humming through the air. But Lyra moved through it all with quiet purpose. She had spent her days speaking with Earth's representatives, sharing Xanthari knowledge of Krell tactics, offering alliance not out of need but out of gratitude. The humans, once wary of alien powers, now listened. They had seen what one of their own had done. They had seen Lisa's sacrifice broadcast across every channel, her final flight replayed in memorials from Mars to Titan. But Lyra knew the war was not over. The Krell mothership had been crippled, not destroyed. Scattered reports spoke of new hives forming near the outer rim, of planets going dark without warning. Fear was spreading faster than fleets could respond. And so Lyra made a decision. She would not hide. She would fight back, not alone but with those who understood that courage crossed species. She requested a meeting with Earth Command, not through diplomats but directly. They granted it, curious. In a small briefing room lined with star charts, she faced a group of human officers. Among them sat Captain Diane Ross, a veteran pilot with sharp eyes and a reputation for never backing down. Diane had known Lisa. They had trained together at the Lunar Academy. "You want to build a new fleet?" Diane said, arms crossed. "With what?" "Your people are gone. Your shipyards are dust." "Not all are gone," Lyra replied. "And not all shipyards are lost. Deep in the Veil Nebula, hidden behind gravitational shadows, lies the forge of Xanthara. It was sealed before the war, untouched. It holds the blueprints for our war forms and the means to build them." Diane frowned. "Why tell us?" "Why not rebuild in secret?" "Because secrecy failed us," Lyra said simply. "The Krell thrive in isolation. They divide, conquer, erase. We must do the opposite. We must unite, and Earth showed me that unity is possible." Diane studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right. But if we're doing this, we do it together. Human engineers, Xanthari tech, no secrets," agreed, Lyra said. Preparations began at once. A joint task force was formed, codename Phoenix Wing. Diane would lead the human contingent. Lyra would guide the Xanthari side. Their first mission: reach the Veil Nebula, activate the forge, and build a ship unlike any before. One that blended human resilience with Xanthari grace. The journey took 17 days. They traveled in a refitted cruiser, the Dawn Chaser, crewed by both species. At first, tension ran high. Humans found Xanthari customs strange, their silent meditations, their habit of touching foreheads to show trust. Xanthari found humans loud, impulsive, too quick to speak before thinking. But slowly, over shared meals and night watches, bridges formed. A human engineer named Claire taught Xanthari techs how to reroute power through human conduits. A Xanthari navigator named Kale showed humans how to read starlight not just as light, but as memory. Lyra watched it all, heart swelling. This was what Lisa had believed in, this fragile, beautiful thing called trust. When they reached the Veil Nebula, it was more beautiful than Lyra remembered. Clouds of violet and gold swirled like living paint, hiding the forge behind layers of cosmic mist. The entrance was a narrow rift, invisible to standard scanners. Only a Xanthari blood key could open it. Lyra placed her hand on the ancient stone arch at the nebula's edge. Her blood glowed as it seeped into the grooves. The rift shimmered, then parted like a curtain. Inside, the forge waited, a vast sphere of black crystal floating in zero gravity, humming with dormant power. Towers of light rose from its surface, holding dormant warforms in stasis. Sleek, organic ships shaped like diving birds, their hulls grown. Not built, it's alive, Claire whispered. Eyes wide. It sleeps, Lyra corrected gently. And it needs a spark. That spark came from Earth. Diane brought a human fusion core, compact, powerful, designed for deep space missions. Together they fused it with the forge's heart. Light erupted. The sphere pulsed like a beating heart. One by one, the warforms awakened, their hulls shimmering to life. But as the first ship powered up, alarms blared. Sensors detected incoming vessels, Krell signatures. Not a swarm. A scout fleet. They had followed them. How? Diane hissed. Lyra's face darkened. They must have tracked the energy surge from the forge's activation. Or someone talked. Betrayal hung in the air. Among the mixed crew, suspicion flared. But there was no time. The Krell scouts were closing fast. We can't fight them with half-built ships, Claire said, panic in her voice. We don't need to, Lyra said. She turned to Diane. The first warform is ready. It has one pilot seat. It responds to biorhythm, not controls. It bonds with its pilot, Diane understood. You're not asking. You're telling me to fly it. No, Lyra said. I am asking you to trust it. As Lisa trusted me. Diane hesitated only a second. Then she nodded. Let's go. She climbed into the warform. The cockpit sealed around her. The ship's interior glowed soft blue, tendrils of light wrapping around her arms like vines. She felt its thoughts, not words, but feelings. Purpose, loyalty, readiness. Outside, the Krell scouts opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked toward the forge. Diane launched. The warform moved like thought-given wings, darting, twisting faster than any human ship. It didn't dodge with mechanics, but with instinct. She fired not with buttons, but with will. Beams of coherent light lanced out, piercing Krell hulls with surgical precision. Within minutes, the scouts were gone. But Diane didn't return. She hovered at the edge of the nebula, staring into the dark. Lyra contacted her. What is it? They knew we were coming, Diane said. They were waiting. This wasn't chance. It was a trap. Lyra's blood ran cold. If the Krell had inside knowledge, then the Alliance was already compromised. Worse, they might know about Earth's colonies. Back on the Dawn Chaser, an investigation began. It didn't take long. A human comms officer, Private Riley, had been sending encrypted bursts during night watch. Under questioning, he broke. His family had been taken during the Krell raid on Europa. They promised to return them if he cooperated. Lyra faced him not with anger, but sorrow. Fear makes us do terrible things, she said. But betrayal kills hope. Riley was confined. The fleet's codes were changed. But the damage was done. The Krell now knew Earth and Xanthara were working together, and they would come in force. Lyra called a council. Humans and Xanthari stood together in the forge's central chamber. We cannot wait, she said. We must strike first. Not at their scouts, but at their heart, the primary hive on Xylos Prime. Diane nodded. It's suicide. Maybe, Lyra said. But Lisa didn't die so we could hide. She died so we could fight back. Plans formed quickly. They would take 3 warforms, 2 piloted by Xanthari volunteers, 1 by Diane. The Dawn Chaser would stay behind guarding the forge. Claire and Kale would oversee final construction of more ships. The jump to Xylos Prime was brutal. The planet was wrapped in a storm of bioelectric clouds, the sky red with ash. Below, the hive pulsed like a diseased heart, towers of bone and metal rising from the crust. Millions of Krell moved within it. They struck at dawn, or what passed for dawn on that cursed world. Diane led the assault, diving through the storm, her warform screaming with energy. The Xanthari ships followed, weaving through anti-air fire, targeting the hive's neural spires. But the Krell were ready. Swarms of fighters rose to meet them. The battle was chaos. One Xanthari ship fell, torn apart by claws and plasma. The other fought on, buying time. Diane reached the central spire. She fired everything. The warform's core overloaded, channeling all power into one final beam. The spire cracked, then exploded, but as she pulled away, a massive claw erupted from the hive. A Krell warlord, larger than any seen before, armored in living metal. It grabbed her ship, crushing the wings. Lyra watched from orbit, helpless. She had stayed behind to coordinate, but now she saw Diane's signal flicker. Without thinking, Lyra launched the last ready warform. She had never piloted one. Centauri queens did not fight, they led. But today she would do both. She plunged into the storm. The warform responded to her grief, her rage, her love for those who had already fallen. She struck the warlord from behind, tearing into its neck with energy blades. The creature roared, releasing Diane's crippled ship. Diane ejected just before her warform exploded. Her pod tumbled toward the surface. Lyra caught it mid-fall, cradling it in her ship's energy field. She rose through the storm, the warlord screeching below, too wounded to follow. Back in orbit, they regrouped. Diane was alive, bruised but breathing. The hive was crippled, its command structure broken. The Krell would retreat, at least for now. On the return journey, no one spoke much. They were tired, grieving, but changed. Diane sat beside Lyra on the observation deck, looking at the stars. Lisa would have loved this ship, Diane said softly. She would have flown it better than me, Lyra replied. Diane smiled. Maybe, but you flew it for her. That's what matters.